In the heart of our village, there's a story that's been passed down for generations. My name is Kofi, and this is the story of the Christmas that changed everything for my family. It was a time of joy, but also a time of mystery, secrets, and the kind of danger we never saw coming. It was a time when the lines between the spiritual world and our own lives were so thin that we could almost feel the spirits brushing past us. It all started just before Christmas. I remember the excitement in the air. Like every year, we were preparing to travel to my mother's ancestral home for the holidays. We lived in the city, but every Christmas, my wife Adama would pack the children up and we'd make the long journey to a village deep in the forest. It was a tradition we had kept since we were children ourselves, and the children loved it, running through the fields, eating the fruit fresh from the trees, and playing with their cousins until dusk. But this time, it felt different. Something was off. Adama had been restless in the days leading up to the trip. It wasn't unusual for her to be busy preparing, but there was a quiet anxiety in her that I hadn't noticed before. Every time she passed by me, I'd catch her praying softly under her breath, as if seeking reassurance. "Kofi, do you think we should pray before we go this year?" she asked one morning, her hands still busy folding clothes. I laughed it off. "Adama, every year we travel with no problem. Why start worrying now? It's just a short drive. What could go wrong?" I gave her a reassuring smile. But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the unease I was feeling. That evening, we gathered as usual. The children were already buzzing with excitement, talking about the fun they'd have with their cousins. The house was filled with the sweet smell of Adama's cooking, jollof rice, fried plantains, and fried goat meat. It was a typical Christmas scene, but even as the children played, I felt an uneasiness in the air. Adama, however, seemed calm, as she always did. She knelt down to pray, whispering softly to God, asking for protection over our family during the journey. Later that night, as I prepared the car for the trip, a strange thing happened. The engine wouldn't start. I tried again and again, but nothing happened. It was like the car had been possessed by something unseen. Adama, still calm as always, suggested we pray about it. I rolled my eyes and muttered, "It's just a car, Adama. We'll call the mechanic in the morning. Let's not turn this into something bigger than it is." But she insisted on praying again. We eventually got the car fixed, but something inside me felt unsettled. I didn't know what it was. It was almost as if the world was trying to warn me. The next morning, as we began our journey, everything seemed fine. The children were singing along to the radio, and the road stretched ahead, winding through the thick forests and hills that led us to her village. But as we drove deeper into the forest, something happened. The car started acting up again, and the air grew thick with tension. It was then that we encountered the woman. She was standing by the side of the road, her back bent, her face hidden under a faded scarf. She waved at me as we drove past. Normally, I would have ignored her, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the desperation in her eyes or the way she looked so frail. I rolled down the window. "Mama, where are you headed?" I asked. She looked up, her eyes old and filled with sorrow. "I'm going to the next village, my son. Can you give me a ride?" she asked in a voice that cracked with age. I motioned for her to get in, and she did, sitting silently beside us. The car continued down the narrow path, but it was clear this woman wasn't just an ordinary traveler. As we drove, she looked at me with a piercing gaze, as though she was looking right through me. After a while, she spoke softly. "You're going to your wife's village for Christmas, yes?" I nodded. Yes, we are. She sighed deeply, then looked out of the window. You should not go. Not this year. I chuckled, thinking she was just an old woman caught up in superstition. Mama, we travel every year and nothing happens. It's just a trip to the village. What could go wrong? The woman turned to me, her expression stern. You don't understand. There is danger waiting for you on that road. If you must go, you and your family must pray and fast. The spirits are restless this year. And if you don't heed the warnings, something terrible will happen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mama, with all due respect, we don't need to fast and pray. We're just going to the village for Christmas. I laughed it off, but the weight of her words lingered in my mind. We dropped her off at the next village, and I thought nothing more of it. But something about that encounter stayed with me. We arrived at the village a few hours later, and everything seemed normal at first. The children ran off to play with their cousins, and the elders greeted us warmly. But Adama, always so attuned to the spiritual world, was still uneasy. She suggested we all pray together before the evening festivities began. I reluctantly agreed, mostly to please her. As we prayed, the air felt thick, almost electric, as if something unseen was watching us. The village was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes when the spirits are near. That night, something happened that none of us could explain. A sudden storm appeared out of nowhere, and the wind howled through the trees. It felt unnatural, as if the earth itself was warning us to leave. I heard strange whispers in the wind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The next morning, Adama came to me, her face pale. Kofi, I had a dream. In the dream, I saw a man, a shadow with no face. He told me that there was something evil here. He said the village is cursed. I didn't take her seriously, but as we gathered our things to head back to the city, we realized we couldn't leave the village. The roads had become impassable due to the storm, and there was no way to get out. That's when I heard the news. The woman we had met on the road had passed away that night in the next village. We were trapped. It was then that we realized that there were things in this world we didn't understand, things far older than any of us. The village had a dark past that no one spoke of. It wasn't just a coincidence that every time we came to visit, strange things happened. In the end, we didn't just learn about the importance of prayer. We learned that some places hold more than just memories. They carry the weight of forgotten promises and broken pacts. It wasn't until I heard the full story of the village's dark past that I understood the woman's warning. Her words were not just superstition, they were a desperate plea for us to turn back before it was too late. We eventually left, but I've never forgotten that journey. I still hear the whispers in the wind when I pass through that part of the forest. And I know now, as I always tell my children, that some roads are better left untraveled.